Government that's not in Coburn's waste books, like the $98,000 that the Interior Department spent on this outhouse in Alaska, and the $1 million spent on this fancy bus stop in Washington, D.C. Mattie Duppler is with Americans for Tax Reform. That's Grover Norquist's group that tries to shrink government. You point out that stuff like the outhouse and the bus stop are just a tiny part of what needs cleaning out.
Right, and $1 million here, $1 million there. It seems like a small part of what our government's spending when it's $3.7 trillion every year. But this is how we get to the product of that huge government. When you've got one senator who needs an outhouse in Alaska, you've got another congressman who needs a bus stop in suburban Washington, D.C., they vote for each other's bills, and that's what really gets the ball rolling on a lot of these big spending projects.
What gets me most is the corporate welfare. This is taxpayer money going to rich people. And both the left and the right support it?
You know, the left traditionally says we need some kind of fairness, and it's not fair to give away to corporate America because they're already too rich.
The Democrats are pushing public broadcasting, green energy, arts subsidies. Republicans also support farm subsidies. They back NASA.
You see a lot of Republicans trying to protect very affluent defense contractors who get a lot of work out of the Pentagon budget. And guys who for years have been talking about cutting the size of government can't do it when it comes to the Pentagon.
Both parties support the ethanol subsidy, or have so far. You have said entities that depend on the government are like ticks.
Well, it is a parasitic relationship. It really is, because when you have corporate welfare, when you have individual payouts, when you have outlays going to, politically connected people, they all want a bite of that apple. And when you have the host, the federal government, giving it out, every parasite there wants to be the first one to the host because they know the last one is not going to get those federal dollars that they need to survive.
So they need the host, but they also suck its blood and kill it.
Eventually, yeah.
They will.
It seems like an analogy, right?
Stop laughing about this. The president, when he ran for office, said he would cut corporate welfare, and he specifically cited two government programs.
We just need to cut back. Like waste at the Economic Development Agency and the Export-Import Bank that's become little more than a fund for corporate welfare.
They both still exist. The Export-Import Bank. And that sounds nice. We're going to help people export and import things.
The whole thrust behind the Export-Import Bank is that other governments subsidize their companies so much, other foreign governments, that we need to subsidize ours to compete. That's the kind of thinking that government has. Rather than making us more globally competitive by reforming our tax code, getting rid of a lot of the quotas and tariffs and things that restrict our ability to compete globally, we decide we need to pay companies more to be able to compete with companies that are paid more by their governments as well.
The president also mentioned the EDA, the Economic Development Administration.
And what this is really a mini stimulus program that's institutionalized in the federal government, because what they do is they give out grants to economically impoverished areas, but historically, throughout the entire history of this program, there's never really been any metric in place to say what is an impoverished area, why they deserve to get money. It's really free checks being written to, again, politically connected people within government, and probably a lot of blue states as well.
And there's no evidence that it really helps the poor.
Exactly.
It takes from picking winners and losers, giving the politicians more power.
Giving the politicians more power and keeping people poor who depend on those kinds of subsidies.
Another disgusting program is flood insurance. Why?
Well, there's no such thing as private flood insurance for all purposes in the United States.
There would be if the government weren't stomping on it with its big feet and
Correct.
saying, we'll do it.
Yeah, so the National Flood Insurance Program is something that's actually just recently been passed in both houses, and you've got Republicans and Democrats lining up to support the idea that we need to subsidize premiums for people who buy beach houses in risky areas, because your beach house is on a beach which may flood.
And I should disclose, I was guilty of accepting this wasteful subsidy. I was young and stupid, and I built a beach house. The house was on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. A risky place to build, but I built anyway, because a federal program guaranteed my investment.
It can happen to you. Protect your home with flood insurance.
The flood insurance program provides valuable protection for approximately 5.5 million homeowners.
So taxpayers may help foot the bill if a flood hits movie stars' homes on Malibu Beach or the Kennedy family compound. Eventually, a storm swept away my first floor, but I didn't lose a penny. Thanks.
I never invited you there, but you paid for my new first floor.
Eventually the whole house went in the ocean, and you paid again, which is just awful. After Hurricane Sandy, they were going to say, okay, we're losing too much money in this, we're going to cut it back. Everybody agreed to cut it back. When it came time to do it, they said, oh no, people are going to be hurt.
Washington lacks the courage to do anything that would actually, reform these programs that cost taxpayers money. They like to talk about it a lot, but as you said, when push comes to shove, it never really comes to fruition.
The Market Access Program, what's that?
This is a program run through USDA to allow, foreign companies, allow us to really promote our industries here abroad. But of course what this does is it goes to a lot of the industries here that our farm programs subsidize steeply.
The Pet Food Institute, Sunkist, Welch's Food, the Wine Institute.
Right, and even, industries that we heavily subsidize and heavily support here as taxpayers, soybean industry, cotton industry, they get a ton of money from this program to go elsewhere and talk about how important their industry is and how other countries should be buying the products from us, despite the fact that we make it very expensive to do so.
The Small Business Administration. Sounds good. Help small businesses.
Sounds great, except for probably about 99% of the businesses in the country qualify as small businesses under this program. It's a great jobs program for members of Congress. It doesn't do for jobs actually out in America, because all it does is allow politicians to say they've given money to businesses to hire and employ people, when really it's funneling money to a lot of enterprises that turn out not to be profitable and not to be able to return their loans.
They don't have a great loan record.
No, they do not.
The Maritime Administration.
We like to think that when we're building ships and planes and shiny things, we're creating a lot of jobs and we're doing something to help the country. But again, if these were things that were actually profitable and were enterprises that really help the American economy, they would succeed on their own without federal taxpayer dollars to hold them up. And this is what fuels the quid pro quo in Washington and grows the size of government.
Thank you, Mattie Duppler. To keep this conversation